God has given all of us a mission to make disciples here and everywhere for the glory of God.
Minus 10, 9.
We want our church to be a launch pad for sending people out on the mission God has for them. Regardless of who you are, we all have a role to play. We are all involved in God's story. We pray that the story shared through Mission Control will encourage you to see how God is calling you to be used by Him. Hello, my name is Amanda, and I'm the Communications Director here at First Baptist Melbourne, and the host of this podcast. I'm so happy that you're joining us in Mission Control today as we kick off a little bit of a back-to-school theme of conversations for the month of August. Today we have Katye Campbell joining us. Katye is well known in the area and currently serving in the local government on the school board here in Brevard County. Her husband Jim is the lead pastor at Bay West Church, a church plant of First Baptist Melbourne. On a personal note, Jim and Katye were some of the first people I connected and worked with when I was new to the area. I'll always be thankful that Jim gave me a chance and actually read the cold call email I sent out. My conversation with Katye was one I definitely looked forward to. From all of my observations, God has been using Katye in some pretty cool places to do some unique things. So I was excited to pick her brain and learn more about the ways God has been using her and her positions. In our conversation today, we talk about how God opened her up to the idea of running for school board, how He had been preparing her along the way, and the importance of walking in obedience with the Lord at every step of the way. Well, I guess first, what is your connection to First Baptist Melbourne? Obviously, a lot of people know what it is, but I think we have some new people who may not even know that you're connected in some way.
Right. So in 2007, First Baptist called Jim and I to come, my husband Jim, to come out here and be the young adult pastor. For him to be the young adult pastor, which was pretty much everything 18 to 25, college, young marrieds, singles, in that I should say 18 to 35, I think.
Oh man, even bigger.
Yeah, right. And so it's the first time they'd have that as a full-time position. And so we came and served in that role. One of the things that they liked on his resume was that he'd been a part of a church that had started a satellite campus, and First Baptist Melbourne had been starting to think about the idea of satellite churches. And so he had really more of the technical side of things. It'd be great to have his experience. None of us ever thinking, either, Pastor Larry or, Jim or I thinking, he would be the pastor of that work.
Yeah.
And so as over the next couple of years, as, God started opening the doors, that became more real, that this is what they were, God was calling us to. And so we launched Bay West Church as a campus of First Baptist in 2009, the year that Heritage High School opened, also the year we had our last baby. So I always remember how old it is because we had two babies in the same year, a baby church and a baby. And so we launched that, and we worked out of Heritage High School for about 4 years. Uh-huh. And then we're very blessed to build relationships with the Mission Church down in Palm Bay, and they invite churches in all the time to share their space. And so we've been there since then. So stayed as part of First Baptist. And then about 5-ish years ago, we launched as an independent church. And it was just a great blessing for First Baptist just to gradually release and to support us until we could stand on our own 2 feet.
Mm-hmm. What are you currently doing right now? Where does God have you on mission in your life?
Yeah, so in 2018, I was elected to the school board of Brevard County, and then just recently reelected. Certainly not anything I was ever looking for, but I certainly consider that my primary ministry right now.
For sure.
Yeah.
You're on the school board, what does that mean?
So, as an elected official, we're making decisions, we're making policy for the school district. I represent, the 1/5 of the county, but we make decisions that affect the whole entire county. My schedule is kind of, it's unique. There was somebody from First Baptist that actually kind of talked me. I would say, I'm going to blame you because you're the one who talked me into it. He's the one who said, well, how about you? And we were talking about how we need to get somebody good to run for school board. And back in 2016, I'm like, yeah. So I started having conversations.
Fully into it.
Right. I'm
Someone
like,
else.
yeah. I tried to talk a couple of people into running, and I'm just going to tell you that it was Dan Carter.
On blast.
Right. And so you need to have him in next. But he, how about you? And I just laughed. I was like, that's so funny. Ha, 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 ha. And then I said, I'll pray about it. Really just kind of passing it off. But I did. I prayed about it for 9-10 months. And these are the kinds of prayers I prayed. God, I don't really think this is what you have for me. I'm pretty sure you're not calling me to this. Yeah, I don't think this is a good idea. And listen, remember I just talked about how we launched independently. That was the year we were doing that.
Oh,
and
okay.
so Jim was saying, I don't know.
The timing was crazy.
Right, how can we be running a campaign and launching as an independent church? I just don't think so. And so I was praying those kinds of prayers. And we got to the end of that 9 months, and I came to Jim and I said, I need you. I think that the Lord is starting to make this clear that this is what we're supposed to do, because it is a we, not an I. Just like ministry, it's a we. And we had to be in agreement. I said, would you please commit over the next week to really pray intensely along with me? And we got to the end of the week, and I have to tell you the story. He was doing a series on storms, and unbeknownst to him, we were about to have a hurricane.
This was 2017.
17. And I don't remember which hurricane goes, but
they all blend together.
I know. And he said, I was getting ready. I'm preparing for this sermon and about Jesus being in the boat and taking the disciples out on the boat. And the thought that came to mind was, would Jesus intentionally, I've thought in my head, Jesus wouldn't intentionally take us into a circumstance where he knew there was going to be a storm. And like, no, that's not biblical. Jesus absolutely took the disciples in the boat in a situation where he knew there was going to be a storm.
Yeah.
So that he could show them his power and say, peace be still. And so when I think about our life, would Jesus take us into this season where we know there's going to be a storm? Absolutely, he will. So that he can show that he's in control. Mm-hmm. And he can show that peace be still. And so we just surrendered at that time and said, we don't know what this is going to look like. But God, yes, we say yes.
Okay.
And so almost immediately, God started connecting us with people because we didn't know anybody who...
Had you ever had any political experience before this?
No, absolutely
you
not.
had education experience.
Right, I did. And so when I to back up, when I had those conversations with Dan Carter, I'm like, that's not me. It turned into, why not me?
Okay.
Because I was a teacher. I taught for 7 years. We had 3 kids in the public school systems.
Yeah.
Obviously, we knew our community well because of our years of ministry experience in this south end of the county. And on top of that, I had gone back into subbing because it was a nice flexible thing. I could take care of my mother-in-law who was with us at the time, but still, earn a little bit of money, get involved in the schools. And so I'd worked as an employee. So I'm like, well, why not me?
Yeah.
But God really opened the doors because we couldn't have done it without those relationships that he was forming, connecting us with people who said, here's how to run a campaign. Here's some pitfalls. Don't step here. Here's what you should do to design your signs. Here's what your t-shirt should look like.
Okay.
Here's some connections. Let me connect you to this person who will help you do this. And all of a sudden, and then people were so excited.
It's like open door after open door.
Absolutely. And because of some of the things that were going on in the county at the time, when we came out and announced that I was running for school board, people went nuts. They're like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. It's probably my most shared Facebook post of all time off of my personal page. Because we were like, oh my gosh, this is my friend and she's running for school board. My friends back in Texas were like, look, my friend.
Well, that's like affirming too.
It was, absolutely. And so, if there was just an excitement, and that helped, even though none of us knew what we were doing. But the Lord just really walked us through so many circumstances and showed evidence of him just walking through the storm, because it was certainly a stormy time.
Yeah. When you were younger, this feels like an obvious answer.
Right.
Did you ever think in the vast future you would be like working in politics and school board? And was there ever a dream?
No, this was never a dream of mine. It's interesting because when I was about 16, I felt like the Lord was calling me into ministry.
Okay.
And of course, at the time, as a girl, I was like, I don't know what it's going to be. He'll probably call me to be a missionary, and so I went to things like Mission 95, which is kind of like Passion, but for
like missions conference.
Right, missions conference when I was in college, and like, oh, this is what this was going to be. And of course, I met and married Jim, but God wasn't really calling him to missions. We did music ministry and youth ministry for those first few years, and then continued with music. And then God called him to be a pastor. And so I was, I have always, even though I wasn't ever formal, like I'm getting paid to be a minister, I was very much into the ministry right along with him. I even in the years I was teaching,
it was just as much a call for you as it was for Jim.
It was absolutely. I wasn't called to be a pastor's wife. I was called to ministry. And so who happened to be a pastor's wife. So I helped with the choirs. I helped with youth. I discipled ladies. When we were here at First Baptist, we started a group called Me Time, Mom Encouragement Time. And for, 7 years, I led that group and was really just able to disciple women and encourage them in that time of life as young moms. And I just have always loved that. So I was the interim worship leader for 4 years at Bay West because
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was right before right through the end of the campaign time. And so those are the things that I really saw myself doing, just being that second support, in a church. That's what I thought I'd be doing. And so people always ask this strange question, how do you enjoy your job? Do you like your job? And I laugh inside because I think, what a strange question to ask somebody who gets yelled at all the time. But this is my answer consistently, and it's still true to this day. This right here, this job that I have is the hardest thing that I have ever done.
Yeah.
But I know that I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And, I can tell people who aren't Christ followers that, and they understand. But I know I'm right where I'm supposed to be. When you have conversations with people every week that just confirm, this is why I'm here. I'm here to encourage people. I'm here to pray, to be a positive influence. I don't sit at the dais and share the gospel on the microphone.
Sure.
But the people who are around me who work close, they know who I am, why I do what I do. They know that I pray for them.
Yeah.
They know that I'm not coming from that political background. So if I say something, I'm not out to get you. I'm not trying to push through an agenda.
Yeah.
I believe this is right.
Yeah.
Because the Lord is the one who leads me.
Yeah.
And it's opened up a lot of doors for some really great opportunities, great conversations.
So looking back, do you feel now and do you see now that maybe this is what this is the ministry God was preparing you for? Or do you feel like there are bigger steps? Or is this each season just so unique?
Really, I think what you said each season is so unique. And Jim and I have seen that through our ministry together. In those first few years, I was a teacher, he did youth ministry, and then we'd kind of shifted, and then he was just doing music, and then I stayed home with the kids. And so each season was very different. We had the season where his mom came to live with us, and before she passed away, and that was a season. And then we've stepped into this season. And, it's funny because just a few months ago, Jim said, so what are you going to do after your term is over? And I'm like, why are you asking me that right now? I've got almost 4 years
on the
left.
now.
I know, like this current season is so stressful. I'm just doing day at a time, hour at a time. And so honestly, what's in the future is a lot of question marks, but it's not question marks I'm worried about. I am happy. I told him I'm happy to fade into the background and go back to just doing what I was doing before.
Less people yelling at me.
Right. But I know that every step along the way, the Lord has been building and into my life experiences. Just like I didn't think that I would have been doing this, but I look back and go, okay, my years as a teacher, my years as a parent, even my years of subbing, all of those things helped me be a better school board member.
And we're kind of preparing for
right. Yeah. So I don't know. Are my years as a school board member going to be preparing me for something else? I don't know. Whatever it is, there are certain things that we can't stop doing regardless of our positions. And that is serving in the body of Christ, discipling people. It may look different. It may be more formal, informal. And of course, my commitment to our family, to support my husband, to disciple our children and to support them. But the truth is, by the time I get to the end of this term, it'll be the senior year of our youngest child. So, part of me is going, woohoo, that's going to be so fun. But, as a couple, we're looking forward and going, okay, God, what doors would you open up? Because there's no retirement for ministry, and we won't be old enough to retire anyway. But, what would it look like?
What does the next season look like?
Right. What does it look like? What will you be freeing us up to do in ministry together? When the next stage comes. So it's kind of exciting knowing that it's God's already written it, but from our perspective, it's a blank page.
Yeah.
Right? He's already got the masterpiece all crafted, and we just need to follow the path.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because there seems to be this sense of there's only one call that each of us have, and we're just looking for that one call, and we might miss that one call, and this sense of arrival. But I like the story of no, each season has just kind of been different, and just walking in obedience and walking in step.
It is. And, I go back to those years of doing the Me Time ministry here at First Baptist Melbourne, and they were such blessed times for me and for the relationships that I built. And some of those women are my best friends and still support me, even though we're not part of First Baptist anymore. Just still people that I'm connected with who are my prayer warriors. And I know that, but here is the thing that is so crucial. And that is being obedient at every step.
Yes.
Because if you aren't obedient at this step, God's not going to take you to the next one, and you won't be ready for it.
Yeah.
And so even if he's calling you to something that even Jim, Jim never thought of when he felt clearly called to do ministry. Yeah. But he was not a pastor. I'm not going to be a pastor. So his story is very similar. I will never do that. And God took us on this circuitous route, to get for him to be the pastor. Yeah. And so, but I do know that every step along the way, we've got to be obedient to what God sets in front of us. And when we are, then he will fill in the gaps of what we think we don't have to that. Because we come and think, I can't do that because I don't have this and I don't have that.
Yeah. I don't have this experience. I don't. Yeah.
Right. And he I was thinking even years ago when I was trying to talk other people into doing this, I don't have a master's degree. I've never been a principal. I was looking at the school board and going, oh, all these people have this and I don't have that. God filled in those holes for me, and it certainly has blessed me in the middle of it. And it has been hard. It's been very hard. But that obedience leads to blessing of, the confidence of knowing you're doing what you're supposed to do, and then the confidence of knowing that whatever God leads you to next, you can do it.
And he'll be there with you.
Absolutely.
Even if it's a storm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What are some roadblocks you faced along the way? Maybe even roadblocks you're facing now in a season of ministry.
Yeah. I'll give one. I'll start with a very practical one. Okay. Sometimes, so as a roadblock of sorts, life is just, part of it is me being on the school board, us being in ministry, having 3 teenagers. Our life is so full right now. And I'm not full like in the blessed way, but it's full, busy. Crammed. And so a roadblock for me is just my personal, I'm struggling to shift my mindset of what is possible to be done. I mean, there's always this ideal. I'd like my home to be so neat and
perfectly tidy and clean.
Right. And yes. I really love to cook, and I like my family to have healthy meals. And then there's some week, I look back on last week and I go, okay, we had Taco Bell pizza, and
we love Taco Bell.
Right, I know, but we had I literally had 0 vegetables, last week. So I'm like, so I have this struggle. So for me, a lot of the roadblocks that I face on a recurring basis is this feeling of overwhelm. I get in these stages, I feel just this great sense of overwhelm. And I really just have to go back to the Lord and not continue to walk into panic, but to do an about face and go, nope, not going to do that. And I may have gotten myself into this mess because maybe I overbooked my calendar and maybe I have unrealistic expectations. But that doesn't mean that I can't serve the Lord in this moment and be obedient in this moment. Let's slow down, go back, and He'll take care of me. So that's one thing. On a probably a larger scale, there is frustration in, I hate to use the word politics, but in elected positions where you can't really get a lot done by yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You really have to get the cooperation of the people that you work with, right? I serve on a board with 5 people. I'm only one of 5.
Yeah.
And so there is the positive thing about that is I don't have to have all the answers. When we collaborate, we can come up with some great solutions. So we have great staff who help us. So it's really a team effort. But sometimes it's frustrating because you think, I see this. This is the right thing to do, but I've got to convince at least 2 more people to understand this is the right thing to do. And sometimes you lose.
Yeah.
And sometimes I walk out of meetings and I'm frustrated or I'm angry and I'm like, if they could just see this, and if I could, but I could talk to them blue in the face, and sometimes I'm still going to be on the losing side of that. So that's a roadblock that I face. Not too often. Most of the time we can come to a consensus. We can, collaborate and give and take. But those are really frustrating moments to walk out and go, we missed it on that, and I'm trying not to be prideful and go, well, they could just see, obviously,
obviously I'm right.
right. But of course, they think they're right.
Yes.
So that I would, it's a roadblock of sorts because there is such a great frustration at times. But I will tell you, I've got these teams of people all over the county that pray for me regularly. I've got a guy who texts me every Sunday or Monday, how can I be praying for the school district this week? And I just know that our school district is being covered in prayer. There's people down here, people sending me messages all the time. Katie, I am praying for you. They're praying through our meetings. My family back in Texas is watching our meetings and praying through the meetings. And so I feel enveloped in prayer.
That's awesome.
More than ever before. And our family is enveloped in prayer. And our kids see it. It's been a great testimony to them. I think as they get older, they'll see it even more. But we try to share with them when we can of what people have said, how people are blessing us, because I want them to see the faithfulness of God through his people and the support that we've had.
What are do you have any cool God moments or God stories? And because you've served 1 term, now you're in the middle of your 2nd term?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, or at the beginning of my 2nd term. So in our first campaign, one of the things that we do is we go door to door in neighborhoods, and basically my general, routine is knock on the door. If nobody answers, I put the little card, say, sorry, we missed you, stick it in the door. And so they'll find it when they come home. And if they answer the door, hi, I'm Katye Campbell, I'm running for school board, and just hope you'll get out and vote, whatever. And most of the time it's that short, thank you, they take it, or they say no, thank you, whatever. But every now and then there's a little bit of a longer conversation. And I can't remember which house it was, but it was on Jupiter Boulevard down in Palm Bay.
Okay.
And this gentleman came out, and I don't even know how the conversation got started, but very quickly he shared with me that his wife was very, very ill.
Okay.
I think she had cancer, and she was in the hospital, and he was just sharing how hard it was, and he started to break down. And I just said, can I stop and pray for you? And that's not a unique circumstance. I've actually been able to pray with multiple people because God told me to stop.
Yeah.
And slow down and have this conversation and pray with them. And I didn't have to tell them I'm a pastor's wife. I mean, all they knew is I'm somebody who's running, I'm a politician, right? Running for school board. And so that was probably the first of those God moments on the campaign trail. And I have several more of them this time around. But just to stop and minister to that guy who I probably won't ever see again. Mm-hmm. He probably won't remember my name. I've not heard from him since. Mm-hmm. But just that called me back to, this is why I'm here. I'm not on the campaign trail to get elected. I'm on the campaign trail to glorify God. Yeah. And in the process, I'm letting people know I'm running for school board. But the point is to love people and to glorify God. And if I set that guy on a path of talking to God, reaching out to him, I don't know. I mean, I'll find out in heaven one day, and won't it all be fun to see what God did with the things that we set before him? I know. I am looking forward to that day. But those moments have been very special to me.
What advice do you have for someone who's maybe trying to discern what God wants them to do or where on mission he wants them to be?
I would first say, let go of some of the stress of feeling like you have to get it all perfect right now. Because you may have a picture in your head of what it's going to look like, but I guarantee you,
as you personally have experienced,
that is not what it's going to look like. And I've heard stories of people who've known since they were a little kid, for example, they wanted to be a doctor, and God led them through that path, and they ended up becoming a doctor or maybe a medical missionary or whatever. And but still, the path there did not go
It's
the way.
not all linear.
Right. It's not. And so, to quote Jim's favorite football coach, trust the process. Trust the process that, you don't have to have it all figured out. When I was a 16-year-old and I felt like God was calling me to ministry, there was like, I don't know, I told you I thought it was going to be missions because that's all I knew.
That was kind of the model set before you.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what I did set clear, have a sense of peace. And I will tell you how this draws this in. My life verse is Isaiah 30:21. And I think God gave it to me early for a reason. Around that same time, that's when I picked that as my life verse, which says, whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. Mm-hmm. And I think that has gone with me through all these years, knowing that I don't have to have it figured out. Mm-hmm. Whether I turn to the right or to the left, God is going to point, this is the way, walk in it.
There's not as much pressure of, well, there's an obvious right and an obvious wrong. And if you mess up, you're never getting back.
Right. My job is to keep tuned in to that channel where he's telling me this is the way, walk in it. And so, and there's times when it's harder to hear. And so I'm just, be still, keep praying, keep walking the path that he's told me. So I just really don't put that expectation on yourself. You have to have it all figured out at the end, because even if you think you do, you don't really.
Yeah.
But he's still good and he'll get you there.
Sure. Who has been the most influential on your journey?
Wow.
Or who is someone who has been influential?
Yeah, I know.
That takes off a little pressure.
Right. It is the pressure when you talk about who's the most.
I hate the one yes.
I know. I have had a series of pastors in my life going back and youth ministers and different, even music ministers who have invested in me and given me the opportunities to lead. And I think from one of my youth pastors who he was my youth pastor when I surrendered to the ministry, who said, hey, I want you to lead worship on Wednesday nights for youth. I'm like, okay. I'd never really done a lot of that, playing the piano. And I'd sung a lot, but playing the piano and singing at the same time. I'm like, okay. It led to some ministry opportunities in college. I had a college, BSU director who, same thing, Katie, I want you to do this. And then just serving with Jim in different churches and people saying, hey, I want you to lead this discipleship ministry, or hey, like I said, the Me Time Moms ministry, or whatever, even serving with Jim, getting that opportunity to lead and invest in people, and those opportunities to just have that responsibility very much shaped my opportunity to become a leader. Mm-hmm. To work with people, to disciple women, and God has just really given me some good ones, including the one that I'm married to.
That's good.
Yes,
it's good to have that support. Finally, what advice or encouragement would you have for someone who's feeling the call to make disciples here and everywhere for the glory of God?
Right. Look around you. Close by. It does not have to be a formal class process, right? Or a formal, I'm going to take you through this book study, and so look around you and see who God has put in your path, who you can be an influence. You are probably already influencing, but maybe in a more, hey, let's sit down, let's meet for coffee every week. Would you like to go through and maybe go through a book? And interestingly, and this was another piece of advice I would give, is if you have not been discipled, or you don't have somebody who's walking you through that process, find that person. Yeah. As a young mom with a little, like an 18-month-old and one on the way, I started, that season of overwhelm was coming on me. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? And I looked in our church at the time, this was out in Texas, and I said, find a mom who, not one who's got it all together.
But they look like they're doing okay.
Right. And I knew that they were following the Lord. I knew they were following the Lord. And so I approached this woman, and she'd not ever done this before. And I said, would you meet with me? Would you walk with me? Would you mentor me, disciple me? And she felt very overwhelmed. I'm like, you're one of the minister's wives. I'm like, I need someone who's farther along on the road of this mom life, being a mom, a Christian mom, than me. And we had this awesome time. We went through a Nancy Lee DeMoss book, but just had these great conversations. And so I would encourage people, find that person for you who will walk you through some things, because that'll give you some tools in your tool belt to do that for someone who's just maybe a few steps behind you.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Was there anything you wanted to share that you felt like didn't just come out in the conversation.
No, actually, I think we did pretty good.
Yeah, I enjoyed our conversation. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Good. Well, I have too. And, God is good. And there's so many question marks in the future.
Yes.
But I'm not worried about it right now. I will probably be worried about it later, but I'm not worried about it right now.
Give it a little more time.
I know, because I know I'm at least doing this for the next 3.5 years. So we see, God could do anything. But anyway, like I said, we've been blessed, and I've been blessed by First Baptist. I'll bring it back around to First Baptist. We were blessed for our time here. We were blessed with the support, and when I walk back in these doors, there's not too many. There's not as many people who know us when we come in now. There's
been a lot of growth.
Right, because there's been so much growth. But when I walk back in these doors for different things, even just coming up to the office to, I visit with Martha in the radio station, whatever, there is so much love and support and prayer. People still asking me, how's the church going? How's life on the school board? How are your kids? It's a huge blessing to still be considered part of this fellowship.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Well, thanks for joining me today in your crazy schedule.
I know.
Glad we could work it out.
Well, it's my blessing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Mission Control. If you're interested in learning more about Launch 10X and the different ways to get involved in what God is doing here at First Baptist Melbourne, a great place to start would be visiting our website, launchme.church. In our next episode, we have Jason Shack joining us as we round off our back-to-school emphasis for the month of August. Jason Shack serves here at First Baptist Melbourne as our campus student pastor, in addition to serving with Fellowship of Christian Athletes as the Brevard County Metro Director. We had a great conversation about his 10 years teaching at Melbourne High School and his time with FCA. He shared a lot of great stories about how God has been at work in his life, in FCA, and in student ministry. Until then, I hope you have a great week on mission with King Jesus.